everybody. Welcome to the OnStage Blog Podcast. And we're so excited to be here for our third episode. And I am theater critic Rachel Wagner, and Chris Peterson is here.
Hello, hello.
And today we have Greg Ehrhardt here. And thank you so much, Greg, for coming on and joining us for this week's episode.
Oh, thanks for having me, and I can't wait. We got some good topics to cover this episode.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. Since this is your first time on this iteration of this podcast, when you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience.
Sure. Yeah, I'm part of the editorial staff of OnStageBlog.com, and I write some of the newsletters for the OnStage blog, and I also write for On Screen Blog, which is the movie and TV portion of OnStage Blog, where I write columns for that, along with Ken Jones, our chief film critic, and happy to be here to weigh in on some good theater topics.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited. Well, let's dive in. Let's just talk about it. So we decided we'd cover some news first. We have the announcement about the How to Dance in Ohio closing. And this was a big bummer that it only had, I think, 100 something performances. And Chris, you had a connection with this one. You'd seen it?
Yeah, no, I was fortunate enough to see it. I've got a good friend of mine who's in the cast. Her name's Ashley Wool, and she's playing, one of the autistic characters, and she is autistic herself, which makes, such an incredible achievement to see on stage. And it really is a special show. I mean, I had an incredible time, emotional. I had a smile on my face most of the show. It tells a great story authentically and with the right representation. And I think, in the past, when you've seen characters with either autism or other types of conditions represented on stage, it's not done with the most authentic or genuine portrayal, and or they portray it as like suffering with this,
right,
or things like that. And that's not like this at all. It's something that's really celebratory. And yeah, it's just a shame that not enough people got to go see this. And believe me, this production did everything they could. They did all the right PR. They did some really innovative ticket buying opportunities where you could get like 2 for $50 and all this other stuff, and just nothing worked. And this is maybe a discussion for another day, but when we start talking about streaming Broadway shows and how that can really help impact some of these shows that are in danger of closing, How to Dance in Ohio is a perfect example of how a streaming model could have saved this show for at least a longer period of time.
Chris, how full was the theater when you saw it?
That's a good question. I was sitting in like the third row orchestra. So by the way, they gave me a full disclosure. They comped me and they were very nice about it. But looking behind me, the entire orchestra was full. From my vantage point, I couldn't see the mezzanine all that much, but it sounded like there were a lot of people up there. I will say though, the balcony, I could see the balcony and it was near empty. And I can name on 3 fingers the amount of times that's happened in a Broadway show. And How to Dance in Ohio was the 3rd time, and all 3 shows closed really, really quickly on that end. So that's a good indicator, folks. If you're going to see a Broadway show, especially on a weekend, by the way, this is a Friday night, the entire balcony is pretty much empty. That's not a good indicator that this show is long for this world.
The only time that's ever happened to me is when I saw The Shark Is Broken this last trip. Yeah. And that was a limited engagement anyway, so it was, fine. But yeah, they actually moved me way up. I got a much better seat, so that was nice.
I think that's what happened. I think they had just scattering people in the balcony, and they just moved them up to the mezzanine or brought them down to the orchestra level, because the balcony was practically empty.
Yeah, that happened to me. It was Something Rotten when I saw that. This was years ago.
Oh,
really? Because that was pretty popular.
It was, but we saw, my wife and I had tickets towards the tail end. I forget if they already announced they were closing or not, but we were in the balcony. It's very scary, and they just pushed us up because obviously that's a better audience experience.
Yeah. Why do you think that the show wasn't able to connect? What do you think, Chris?
this is a sore point for me. Because it checks all the boxes that we want out of new musicals. You want an original score. You want an original story that's not based on movie characters or things like that. You want something that's truly authentic. So we got all of that. And the score actually is pretty good. I'm not going to lie. It's a pretty strong score. I think it didn't connect with people because first and foremost, I don't think Broadway audiences are there yet. You know, I think we're still in that phase of like, look, if people are going to come see a Broadway show, they're not going to gamble on their time or their money on something that might not be good. They're going to go for that sure thing. They're going to go for that Lion King. They're going to go for that Wicked, that they know they're going to have an incredible experience at. When you're rolling the dice with a new show like this, you're just going to get that select few people that are going to go see shows like this nowadays. And when you're doing this 8 times a week, there's only so many performances that they can go to. So I think the problem that you had with this one is the word of mouth. It didn't have enough time to get that word of mouth out. I think that it doesn't have any stars in it, so it's not like, you
That's
have
what I
this
wondered.
huge name. Yeah, you don't have this huge name. You have a lot of Broadway vets in that cast, but none of them, obviously, and they would say this themselves, are marquee names. And again, you're talking about a musical that really is more the headline about it is about the casting achievement as opposed to the quality musical. So you're talking about a musical about autistic people, played by autistic people. Sadly, that is going to turn off some general ticket buyers. They're going to be like, well, why do I want to go see that when I can go see this days of wine and roses and things like that are getting like this massive, wonderful reviews. So I think that's the problem, is it just didn't have. Now that's where I think a streaming model could have helped it, because then it's not a huge investment. You can get an audience from all over the world to see this thing. And for families that do have autistic children or artistic people that might have that anxiety about going to a live theater, I have that anxiety about my own child being in a quiet theater for that long. This would have solved that problem. And I think that all those things could have helped this thing. But yeah, I think those are all the reasons why.
I do have to say that they did a performance at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I do not think they picked a very good song. I thought it was very bland. And I think that was a time that they could have, because when I read about it, I was like, this sounds exactly like Dear Evan Hansen Meets the Prom. I've already seen those. and so I think that would have helped, because a core Broadway audience watches the parade just for the Broadway shows. I know I do. That's why I don't watch it for the balloons. Correct. I watch it for the shows. And so, and also it might have helped them a little bit if they had scheduled it later, scheduling it when they did, because then you can't get like the bump that like a Kimberly Akimbo gets because of the Tonys. And all the publicity that comes along. If they've gotten a Tony, or if they get a Tony nomination, it won't help them anymore because they're already gone. So that might have helped them, but it's just tough. It's really tough.
So yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like the only hook of this play was the casting, right? The fact that it was authentically casting autistic characters with autistic singers, right? Because the plot didn't seem particularly special or unique. No stars. That you said, the plot sounds like a plot that's been done a lot of times over.
This is Greg, to that point, I agree 100%. And to me, this is what I call the ripple effect show. So it's like this is the show that's going to create a ripple effect that's going to lead to a more brilliant show down the road. And so this is going to kick open that door so that we can get maybe a better piece, maybe a piece that does have stars. And like I said, if you're bringing these autistic performers and giving them a spotlight with a show like this, they can start to build their resume to then potentially maybe become stars down the road and star in more shows about autistic people and cast it appropriately. So again, this is one of those shows that's like, it's not going to be the best, but it's the first. And therefore, I'm interested and intrigued to see what happens, decades down the road with this.
Yeah.
And as you wrote, Chris, on the blog, it seems like it really changed you, as both a theater fan as well as a theater writer. So there's something a lot to be said about that. Yeah.
And that's why I'm so upset about the whole streaming thing. Because again, I'm so convinced that like if people went to see this show, they would walk out, first of all, understanding autistic people 100 times more than they do. learning how to communicate with them better, learning what to say and what not to say. Because there were things in there that I was like, I've said that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's good to know. Ironically, the only villain in the show, which is quote unquote villain, because he's not a true villain, is a blogger, which I thought was interesting, but like so awkward for me to be there. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I encourage everybody to see the show because you walk out changed, you walk out feeling like you're a better person and a better human being because you've just listened and you truly see these people. And so that's really why I'm so disappointed that this thing is closing so early.
Well, let's talk about another news item that was on the blog, the new musical comedy about the Salem Witch Trials that you wrote about on the blog. And Salem is led by producer Blair Russell. This dark musical comedy features music and lyrics by Jennifer Lucy Cook, the book by T.G. Pfeiffer and Shelby Solo. The musical is described as misinformation spreading like wildfire, outlandish conspiracy theories, and an infamously controversial trial in the early 90s. Yep, this is 17th century New England with pamphleteers presented as 1690s Fox News anchors, contemporary pop music, and a tap dancing apparition of the devil. This is not your community theater's production of The Crucible. I see your face, Chris. That's the official description from the company. Now, I guess in fairness, we have had examples of, you're talking some of the greatest comedic minds that have ever lived that have pulled off these kinds of things, like your Monty Pythons and your people like that. Are these people in that league? That's the question.
Okay. So I'm not gonna lie. When I saw this news item come out, it came out a while ago, by the way. This is not this is not breaking news that this happened. I sat there and I said, look, I understand, I get satire. I understand that people want to take satirical takes on certain events and things like that. But there are certain events in our history that I do believe deserve almost always uniformly a certain level of gravity and seriousness, and remembering that, look, these are things that we might not want to make jokes over or create campy musical comedies about. So when I looked at this, I said, look, here's the thing. Thankfully in 2023 and really over the past you could say 10-15 years, with everything that's happening in our world, we are now starting to reinvestigate and look at certain terrible events in our history with more nuance than ever before, and treating it with more reverence and respect than ever before. So understanding, and the Salem Witch Trials is one of those things. And not just the Salem Witch Trials, but everything that happened all over the world around that same time around witchcraft. So we're just talking about the Salem thing here, but remember, this was happening all over Europe, all over the world. And so when I see and I don't want to sound ageist, but when I see a certain generation of writers that definitely are not coming from that older generation of truly understanding the nuance of these different things and just saying, like, wouldn't it be hilarious if we do this like campy musical comedy with a tap dancing devil, and we'll portray the gossip as these Fox News anchors because that'll really get the point through that it's spreading in misinformation and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, look, actual people died, right? Like women died, children were executed during this thing. Like, maybe we don't do that. And so I wrote this article today, not to interrupt. I wrote an article today and I put it out there, and I won't lie. I mean, people can react to these things how they want, but like, I thought that I treated that article pretty fairly in terms of like, look, some people are going to say, whatever, it's, too soon, Chris, blah, blah, blah. But like, here's the thing. I do think there's room for satire. I get it. And in the comments that people were saying that they're saying like, well, has this guy ever seen Book of Mormon, or has this guy ever seen Spam-A-Lot? And first of all, some of those comparisons don't make sense. But anyway, but like, I'm saying, yes, okay, but I get satire. But I'm talking about and the taking on this subject matter as it is. Because you could take that same synopsis and apply it without the Salem Witch Trials, you can apply it to almost anything else and just make it a random thing in town, and it's fine. But when you add in the Salem Witch Trials to it, and especially, by the way, that whoever came up with that marketing blurb, this ain't your grandfather's crucible, and like you just did a huge disservice to the interest level and seriousness of your show. But I know Blair Russell, and I know that he likes to do this with his shows. But like, it's just one of those things that I'm like, I think it just deserves more gravitas than what they're doing. What do you guys think?
I don't think that the Salem Witch Trials is one of those kind of sacred events. But this little, especially the Fox News part, I'm like, oh, that's so cringe. It's gonna be terrible. But there's a small sliver of chance that this could be, if you can make Springtime for Hitler funny, in a Broadway show, then you can make this funny. But you're talking again about some of the greatest comedy writers to have ever lived, doing the producers and doing, Monty Python, and doing, some of these are some of the greatest minds we've ever had. Is that the person who's saying this is not your community theater's production of The Crucible? I don't know.
Right.
Any funny saves all. If it's funny, and no matter how pure, I'll laugh.
Well, yeah, it's funny and hopefully makes a point. Like, look, Chris, I'm with you if this is just like slapstick comedy and they're just like, it's an absurdist comedy, like, okay. But like, I just want to know what the limiting principle is behind your theory, because we've had plenty of comedies about real serious events, both in theater and film. I mean, just a basic example is like, we made Guys and Dolls, which we made a lighthearted musical about gangsters who, those type of gangsters over the years have murdered many more innocent people than the Salem Witch Trials did. But we even had movies like Dr. Strangelove, who satirized nuclear war. It's like a black comedy about that, and that's one of the greatest movies that that's ever been made. Everyone, I think, still today, recognize that and respects that. So I think it depends on what the message is trying to say is. I think you can do satire really smartly, and have a point while making comedy. But I just, not to be too glib about it, but Salem Witch Trials were 300 plus years ago. Like I think even if I was to agree with you in principle, I think there's still a line here where it's like, all right, once we're past a certain point, it's okay, to sort of make a satire on it.
Well, I it's interesting you say that, because I read a comment online responding to an article that said the same thing. It's like, yeah, it's 300 years ago, and I think after 300 years we're fine. And I said, okay, well, not to get too dark in this subject area, but then do you think are we okay in the year 2022, 24? Okay. Or 21, 24, are we okay with someone doing the same thing with a Holocaust musical?
I mean, like I said, we already had Springtime for Hitler. I mean, we already had dancing Nazis on screen. So
many times.
I mean, on stage.
True.
So,
and my thing is like,
it can be done. It can be done. I think it's all about the writing, and that's hard to do. But well,
to that point, right? They're making light of the villains. They're not making light of the atrocity.
Right?
And I think that's
the difference
key here.
Right.
We have to see the Salem play to see what it's going at. It sounds like they're making fun of the villains in this story, right? And also probably making a point, like we have the same attitude today as we did 300 years ago, amongst certain,
But I think the larger point I want to make sure people understand is when they bring up examples like the producers, or they bring up the examples of some of these other shows, we're talking about shows that were written almost 50 years ago now. And when there was a time when, the producers was incredibly, bold, because, when they wrote that was only like 25 years removed from the events that happened in World War II. But my point is this, and I tried to make this larger point on social media, was saying, like, shouldn't our goal, in whether you're a satirical writer, comedy, things like that, is to evolve our storytelling? Obviously, the way that we treated satire and comedy 50 years ago is not the way that we do it today. And it's not, it's because a lot of people are like, well, just wait till it's written. I was like, I don't have to wait till it's written. The fact that they're taking this on to begin with in the manner that they are is already problematic at least in my mind. So it's like, yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I don't know. I just think that where it would draw the line for me, and I would say absolutely not, is if they kept the characters like young. If this was children, and you have children being involved in this kind of, then absolutely not. That to me crosses a line, and that I would, I mean, especially in theater, because you're gonna have to have these young actors doing it every single day, every single night. And so that's kind of more where it would be more about context and for me.
Right, because once you introduce children, that now you're reducing the audience enjoyment, because now you have parents thinking about
uncomfortable
a lot of other things.
That's
and
true.
like, oh my gosh, what's kids' arms? I go back to, I don't know if every play, musical, movie about a tragic event just has to be dour. We should have those, and I think The Crucible will always be the definitive adaptation of the Salem Witch Trials forever and ever. But it doesn't mean we can't have other interpretations, because honestly, you can learn the most through humor, and you will get, we talked about marketing, you'll get people to want to see a play if there's some even dark humor to it, and even some outright humor. But again, it does depend how it's done. So that I just don't think it's off limits to humor, the Salem Witch Trials specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about Les Mis. So Les Misérables is coming back. The movie is coming back to theaters. Les Misérables returns to theaters for 1 week only with Dolby Cinema's exclusive. You can hear the people sing in Dolby Atmos. So it's the 2012 award-laden classical musical Les Misérables will be shown in Dolby Cinemas across the U.S. for a limited week starting February 23rd. The film adaptation of the musical starred Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe, and Anne Hathaway, with the latter winning her first Oscar for playing the devastating role of Fantine. The special screening marks the film's debut in Dolby Cinemas, featuring enhanced audio with Dolby Atmos and visually stunning Dolby Vision. So all the people that wanted to hear Russell Crowe in Dolby Atmos have their dreams come true. So Greg, what is your thoughts about this?
Well, when we used to do, we had a podcast called Box Office Preview, where we previewed the new releases coming out in theater, and we played a game called See Don't See, where we would rate our excitement to see this on a scale of -3 to +3. +3 being you're there opening night, -3 being you could pay me to go see this movie in the theater. I want Chris to give his score on this for the re-release. I'm not talking about the original release, but the re-release. I don't, it's fine. I like this. I liked the movie adaptation. And by the way, I'm coming from someone, I still have never seen Les Mis on stage, which is a failing of mine, something I want to correct soon. But as a movie experience, I thought it mostly worked. We'll talk about Russell Crowe later. He's the big thing that didn't work for this movie. And it's really there's nothing I could really do about it, but having him sing within the first 5 minutes of the movie was just the worst possible thing that could happen, because it just totally jars you, and you're like, oh my god, like really, we're going to be subject to this, for
the biggest announcement they could make is that in all new dubbing, all new musical dubbing. Right. If they announced that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, sign me up.
I mean, how much more millions could it be? What's funny? If they did that it might open to 20 million, at the box office weekend. Because I know, a bunch of Les Mis fans who hated this movie purely because of that would go see it, like give it another shot. Because I think most of the movie outside of that worked. But Chris, I know you disagree on this, so
so many thoughts.
Les Mis release.
It's one of those things where, like, I had PTSD as soon as this came up, and I started twitching, because I was like, oh my god, I remember my experience sitting in the movie theater watching this. First of all, they almost nailed the casting for me. So one thing you should know, when I was in high school, in college, I used to dreamcast musicals a lot. And so, or movie musicals and things like that.
Mhm.
And I distinctly remember writing down on a piece of paper during theater class in college, my dream cast for a Les Mis movie. And I had Hugh Jackman as Jean Valjean because he had just done Boy from Oz at that point. I was like, this guy would be perfect. And as Javert, I had Alfred Molina as my guy for Alfred Molina. And in hindsight, I'm like, all they had to do is cast Alfred Molina. It's a much different movie.
Yeah.
Sure. My frustrations with Les Mis is this: you have all the money that you want. You've got all the talent in the cast. You have a great director who knows how to shoot a movie. I mean, Tom Hooper, yes, he failed in this one. Yes, he failed with Cats, but he knows how to do. I mean, King's Speech, John Adams, this TV series, like those are gorgeously shot items, and this movie is gorgeous. Like if you put it on mute and you watch it, it is gorgeous to look at. But when you have such glaring flaws, starting with Russell Crowe and literally, and then also like poor decision making, like, yeah, I'm gonna have the actors sing live instead of doing a backing track. And so this way they'll sing live on set, and that's the voice that we're capturing on film, just as if you're in the theater. Well, guess what, Tom Hooper? That's not the experience that we want out of a movie musical. We're going to a musical because we want those soaring scores, we want those gorgeous voices. And we only got those from a select few members of the cast that are live Broadway actors like Aaron Tveit, Samantha Banks. Like that's who we got that stuff from. So there just were like glaring errors, and like no one was saying no to Tom Hooper's ideas on the set, and it just ruined the entire experience for me. Now, my favorite party trick, by the way, is doing a Russell Crowe impression of singing in Les Mis. So if you ever, Greg, next time we're hanging out, if you ever want me to do stars as Russell Crowe, I will do a whole rendition for you.
You're not going to do it now? Come
No,
on, you can't tease like that.
But here's the problem with Russell Crowe's singing voice is that he forgets that, like, in Les Mis, there's very few actual speaking scenes where he's just talking. Right. So when he's not singing, he's still doing his stupid singing voice.
Yeah, there's no talking. It's all
he's
24601.
Like no one on set said to Russell, "Hey, I don't think you should sing like this," or "I don't think we should have cast him," or like and also. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm rambling here, but also like that Russell Crowe, even when I think this is 2009, 2010 when they made this movie, I can't remember the exact date, but like at that juncture in his career, he was not at like the Mount Rushmore of stars that you needed to play Javert. Like I said, you could have had Alfred Molina in this role. He would have killed that, and you would have gotten, the same box office numbers and things like that out of it. No one is going to see this movie for Russell Crowe.
Could have had Gerard Butler.
I mean, he was a pretty big name. He'd won 2 Oscars
in Phantom of the Opera.
Greg, now you're just trying to goad me. You're just trying to troll me.
He was a pretty big name. I mean, Gladiator, and he'd won Oscars at that point. He's pretty big, but still, I think Les Mis is what sells the tickets. It doesn't really matter who you cast in this movie. And I wish that Hollywood would realize that for the 99% of the time, people are going to see musicals because, especially a classic one like a Les Mis, you don't need to pad it with people who can't sing. I'll never understand Gerard Butler in Phantom of the Opera. Like that makes no sense. Like what? But
well, here's what I'll say. I think once you had Hugh Jackman, that was enough. Personally, I think once you had him, I don't think it really mattered. If Anne Hathaway, she had a big fan base at the time. All right, fine, you want to cast her, go ahead. She won the Oscar, so you can't say she didn't, do a good job. But
I can say that, right?
I thought she was. Here's the thing with me. I am a huge softie when it comes to movie musicals.
Yeah.
There are very few that I don't give at least a pass to, because I just enjoy the experience of watching musicals, and I just enjoy going to the movie theater and watching musicals. If there's anything that I am almost guaranteed to at least be like, it was fine, or whatever. Like and for me with Les Mis, even though I think that it sounds like Russell Crowe swallowed a goat, and I don't understand why they picked that. And I don't understand why they have Santa Claus in the Thenardier scene. I hate that. And it's just some other choices I think are really weird. It's still Les Mis, and it's still great songs, and it's a great story, and it's like it's one of those things that, yes, it's very flawed, but am I fresh on it and Rotten Tomatoes? You bet. I absolutely am, because I still had enough ingredients of stuff that I liked, and that, a lot of movies are flawed that I still like. And it's not like one of my favorites, or it's not a great movie, but had enough there to entertain me.
Well, I thought the big songs, I think about Look Down, and I thought cinematically that was a really good cinematic treatment of Look Down. Like, that's not something you're going to get on stage. Like, the way that was shot, it is all the CGI,
and I do agree that the live singing was a mistake. It was like when I first heard it announced, I was like, "Ooh, this is so cool!" And then I'm like, "Oh, they shouldn't have done that." So it's like I would give it like 3 stars out of 5, because it's still Les Mis. But it's not a great movie.
Yeah,
so what are you gonna do?
3 out of 4. Yeah, I think I gave it at the time 3 out of 4.
I was surprised when I heard about this, because I know there's all those Les Mis heads like myself, because Les Mis was one of the first like pieces of media that I really fell in love with. I was completely obsessed with it in high school. I literally knew every line to the show. If they needed a if they needed a swing, I could have gone in at any role. I knew everything. I loved it. And my freshman year of high school, we got the choice with my choir to either see Les Mis or see Cats. So I chose Les Mis.
Good choice.
Yes.
Rachel, have you seen, there's a YouTube clip of Hugh Jackman and Russell Crowe singing Confrontation at a bar. I think it's called Joe's Pub. I forget where it is.
No.
But it's just like a bar audience. And they're singing a bunch of songs together. I don't think it's from Les Mis, but they sung Confrontation. Oh, I'll send you the link, and I'll post it in the comments on YouTube or somewhere. It is so funny. A couple reasons. One is, like, Hugh Jackman can just rip it whenever he wants, wherever he is. Like, you could wake him up in bed and ask him sing this song, and he would do it, and he would love it. Russell Crowe is just bizarre in this rendition. Not just, he still sings, 2, 4, 6, 1. He still sings that style.
Yes.
But he also has these weird googly eyes, and he's like banging his head like he's like doing some like Metallica song right now. Like during like, it is so like unintentionally hilarious on Russell Crowe's part.
Gosh. Wow.
You gotta see it. We'll post a link. It's must see, whether you love or hate the Les Mis movie version. But
well, so I probably will go see it. Why not? I don't know. Do you think either of you will see it? I know you won't, Chris, but will you see it, Greg? Will you go see it? This re-release?
I think I'll pass. No, I'm not sure I could recommend it as a date night movie. No. As we're about to get into the next segment. You're fine seeing this at home and fast forwarding through the Russell Crowe songs, and but that's my general recommendation.
All right. Well, let's dive in. Let's talk about our topic for the week, and that is recommendations for the best date night Broadway shows and streaming shows. So, what do you think? Both of you are married. I'm not, so you can speak more to this. What do you think makes for a good show to take on a date? With a date? What do you think, Chris?
Well, I think, just like going to see a rom-com, movie, I think, having something that has a romantic angle in it is always a good choice. And when I say romantic angle, like romantic comedy that ends well for everybody, not like a Little Shop that doesn't end necessarily well for everybody on that end. And, I also think too, this is gonna sound weird, but like shows that definitely play on nostalgia, whether it's the subject matter, like, obviously going to see like a Lion King or something like that, that's cute and fun and all that stuff that, positive. So lightheartedness, like go for something light for a date. That's where I'd start. Greg.
Yeah. So I want to make a demarcation. I think there's 2 types of shows. I think there's a show you see when you're dating someone, and then a show you see when you're married. And this is a theory. So is half baked. I hope it becomes fully baked. So I want to get your feedback on this. So I think when you're dating somebody, you want to see a lighthearted romantic movie where everything goes great, comes out. It's about young love, youthful love. Those are, star-crossed lovers. I think that's a good dating show and or streaming movie musical you want to see. I think for married, I would suggest going towards, this is going to sound weird, but bear with me. Again, we can bear this out. It's more of a tragic romance kind of thing where they're lovers, but something happens to them that makes them, not that they break up, but either death takes one of them, where it's a musical that makes you in real life appreciate your partner because you're still together and you have something.
Oh, okay.
It's too heavy for a date movie. You don't want to get into those kind of themes because you're just dating, you're just kind of loving, and you want to be inspirational and aspirational, when you're dating somebody. Like a movie musical, like once I was thinking was like The Umbrellas of Cherbourg or La La Land, who are very similar themes where, again, they don't get together at the end, but especially Umbrellas of Cherbourg, where it's like they wish they did, but just real life couldn't make it. And then you can tell your spouse or whatever, it's like, man, I'm so glad we're together. I'm so glad that we've, that life has made us together, for the rest of our lives. That's my general suggestions. What do you guys think about my half-baked theory?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I also think any musical can or play can be a good date night pick, almost any, in the sense of if you know what your partner or prospective date loves and you get them a ticket for, like, if they love, I love Les Mis, and so if someone got me tickets to Les Mis, even though I don't think of that as like a date night musical, I would be like, oh, props. It would be a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right. If you're listening.
So if your spouse doesn't like romantic stuff, like they like, political, shows, movie, like take them to Hamilton, like perfect. Like that's a recommendation.
It could show that you're thoughtful and you're actually thinking about what the person likes and what the person's interests are. That they have an interest in horror, so we're going to go see this, more horror themed show, even though you wouldn't think of it. We're gonna see something a little grittier, and so it's a chance to be thoughtful.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I mean,
right. Well, because interestingly enough, like there's not a whole lot of pure romantic musicals or plays really on Broadway currently.
Yeah, especially currently. Yeah.
Right. Like you have more options streaming, obviously. I mean, there's a whole list of historical examples, but now, I mean, I don't know, guys, what you think. Like it's pretty much The Notebook, I think, for like a pure romance, like in that classical mold.
Well, here's what I had. I had The Notebook written down. And then I had Aladdin written down.
Yep.
I think that's, you got your rom-com elements. And then I actually had Little Shop of Horrors on. I think it's sometimes nice when you have a show that has elements that guys will like and elements that girls will like. I mean, using very stereotypical ideas of guys and girls there, but it's got the romance, it's got the thing, but it's also like funny and got the horror elements. And so the nice thing about Little Shop of Horrors is it will please a lot of different personalities.
Yeah.
So especially if it's like a first date, it's, I think, a very safe first date. I think it should cover like a lot of different.
Yeah, you really don't want anything too heavy for first dates.
It's not too heavy.
No. You want something funny. You want something light and something very inspirational, happy ending. That's that's what you want.
Plus, Little Shop is off Broadway, and it's like a real cozy little theater, and so I think it could be a fun, as opposed to some of those Broadway theaters that are so uncomfortable and horrible. So I think even on that, it's a little bit better.
So Rachel, I have a question. You brought up Aladdin. I want to ask you something. Yes. So if the person you were dating, second date, took you to Aladdin, let's say, like, I got a great show, let's see Aladdin. Not a turn off because it's
not at all.
Disney. Okay.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a huge Disney fan, so they would know. Like if you were in my room, you would see that I have literally a Little Mermaid poster right here, and then I have a Disney Princesses poster right here. So I love, they've been off their game for a while, Disney, but especially that Renaissance era, Disney Renaissance era, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Aladdin. I mean, they were just one hit after another, and that was like right when I was, it was just like the perfect era for me too, as far as film. So no, absolutely not. I mean, some of those Disney musicals I don't like. So but if they picked Aladdin, then that one I do like. If they picked Mary Poppins, then I'd be like, I
would
don't
just
know why you
wonder
picked that one, because I don't like that one.
I was just wondering if you took someone on a date, and most of the, I don't know if this is true for Aladdin. I haven't been to an Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing most of the audience is either like foreign tourists or families. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether that would be the best date night environment. Like
I
if
could
there's a bunch
see
of
that
kids
for
in the
getting like
audience.
cozy with your date.
Right.
It might not be the best. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. And it is a huge theater, the Amsterdam there.
Chris,
So
what do you think? What do you think of that?
Fair.
Would you take it? Would you, in your younger days, single days, would you have taken a date to a Disney Broadway show?
I'm trying to remember if I did. I didn't, but I would have.
Yeah.
You would
so
have. Okay.
you know, I'll just tell this story right now.
Please. Yeah.
And I hope she's listening to this podcast. So I had this girlfriend in high school. Her name was Paula. And I dated her for, I don't know, for 3 years in high school. And Paula, just like me, was a theater person. And it's kind of a flex, I would say, let's go see a Broadway show. And I would, you know, do the whole charming, like, let's go to the city, we'll go to dinner, we'll do whole thing and all that stuff.
Okay.
And we
because you're in Connecticut. You're in Connecticut.
Yeah, living in Connecticut at the time. Right. So just hop on the train, usually go around the holidays, you know, loop that into it. So like this way it's a whole thing. Anyway, so we saw the original production of Ragtime, for instance. We saw the original production of Titanic, stuff like that. And so
both of those are so heavy. That
right.
I would not have thought of either of those.
Now, I didn't say that I wanted to be in this relationship in high school. So maybe I was trying to break up with her by saying taking her to Ragtime. But no, I mean, I would, you know, I would have taken, because I think at that time only Lion King and maybe Beauty and the Beast were running on Broadway. So I would have, but at that time when we were dating, Lion King had just come out. And like, there's no way you're getting tickets to that. So, yeah, I would have if I could have, probably. Yeah.
Would you guys take a date to Phantom of the Opera? Like with, I mean, forget like if they're a big fan, sure, but like as far as like, would you consider that a romantic movie? Because like I've seen that on lists, like, oh yeah, this is a romantic, and I'm like, that is not any type of relationship I would ever want to model. Like
Act one is great. Act one is like, that's, so if you're going to a Phantom of the Opera and you're going on a date, like leave at intermission, like that's, and then you've had like, you're ending on, you know, all those great songs in Act one, like before it gets really crazy in Act two. So yeah, just leave it at intermission. It's a great date.
Well, let's talk for a second about, I think it's campy enough that for me, I would be fine with it, but you'd have to know your date. So for the classics that aren't currently playing on Broadway, I have a list. What I would think would be fun. Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Bright Star, even though that's sad parts, it's very hopeful, especially the end. And it's about a great love story. And it's one of my favorites. Mamma Mia, I think actually could be fun on a date, depending on the person.
Engaged only.
Singing in the Rain. I think would be a fun one on a date.
I object. No, I'm sorry. I object to that for one reason. We're talking about the movie.
Well, the adaptation, but right. Yeah, either one. It's a romance.
So I object. The age gap in that movie is so big. It's creepy. Like, you know, I mean, again, now you're in an age gap relationship yourself. Go right ahead. But I can't, you know, wonderful. The music's wonderful. Great performance.
Dancing.
But, oh my gosh, that is a gross age gap relationship.
And I love that screen to stage adaptation. I think it's excellent. Yeah. And then I also have The Wedding Singer. I think that Broadway musical is actually underrated and really fun, underrated, with some very good songs. And then I think Legally Blonde, the musical, is got romance, and it's got some great songs, and it's really bubbly, and so that's what I had on my list.
I definitely recommend The Wedding Singer if you and or your date have already been to a bunch of weddings together, like as you know, you're plus one
might
to
be
each
a little
other,
pressure.
because that's going to give a whole bunch of conversation topics after the play. But oh man, remember that reminded me of this wedding we went to, or and any future weddings you go to. There's a lot of good potential for
That's true.
For dinner.
I love that list. I would also add She Loves Me to it. It's a cute, wonderful show. But here's the interesting thing. There are musicals out there that I think people think would be great couple watching experiences. And I'm like, no, stay away from it, because it's not about the couple. So like, for instance, like I wouldn't watch The Sound of Music, The King and I, South Pacific. You can watch Oklahoma. I think that's okay. But those three, I'm like, look, those movies and musicals take a turn. And so, it's like, I probably would stay away from those. Fiddler is not a romantic musical either, so stay away from that. Maybe Damn Yankees, but
I tell you, the one I saw on a list that I just do not understand is The Last 5 Years. Why on earth would you want to go see The Last 5 Years on a date? It's all about the dissolution of a marriage. It's all about it's the whole I mean, the whole musical is all a big breakup.
Right. I had Days of Wines and Roses as a do not see on a date list for any engaged, dating, married couple. Like that's going to lead to some grim conversation after that.
The other one that a couple like I would never want to see Next to Normal on a date. Like that's just too awkward.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah. And then I don't love Into the Woods anyway, but I really wouldn't want to see it on a date, especially that second act. I mean,
so Chris, going back to your Fan of the Opera point where you leave it intermission, is there a play that you should only go to the second half of it? So I'm trying to think of example. So like a twofer. So you have to buy two sets of tickets, but you pair the first act of Phantom with the second act of another play. You've got the perfect date night experience.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, Greg, to your point about like having like you take someone that's like, thank God we're married, or thank God, I want to do something that shows your importance to me. I mean, Falsettos is a great example that has a second act that is all about love between two people and all that stuff. There's some great moments there in Act 2. A New Brain is another one that's really good in that regards. Xanadu, and I know I'm doing some deep cuts here, but like, Xanadu is another one where it's such a goofy, campy musical that it's such a fun one on that end. So yeah, those are some good. Pippin, honestly, the second half of Pippin, once you get past like the NC-17 parts of it and the early half of the acts, it's got a really nice moment between Catherine and Pippin there. So
you could easily do Children of Eden, because the second act is a completely different story than the first act.
Yeah, right.
So that one would be good.
Do either of you have a pick for shows they should take if you want to break up with somebody?
Last 5 years.
Last 5 years is a good one.
Sure.
Okay, so all right, that's the one. All
right. or something that is so dark and out there that like the person next to you is like, why would you take me to this?
Well, I think like another one, Waitress, would be a good breakup show.
Oh,
yes, because she breaks up with him at the end. She breaks up with both of them at the end.
Right.
A spoiler alert, sorry.
Right, but the theme is like she's going on to, I guess, I see your point.
That's why it would be a good breakup show.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Like I'm thinking like you should, like if you take someone to go see like Lazarus or like Sleep No More, which are these like dark avant-garde musicals, the person next to you is going to be so confused as to why would you waste my time seeing the show? And then you could be like, well, then you obviously don't get me, and we're through. And then it gives you a good access to like part ways. You go that way, I go this way. We'll walk out the street together.
You could
get your own train home. Sorry,
exactly.
You could take them to see that Evil Dead musical, because there you
go.
And then we scored it with blood and stuff like that. I've never seen it.
Have them sit in the first 2 rows like American Psycho. Here we go. I want a really lovely night with you. Let's go see American Psycho.
Chris, did you ever break up with somebody after a show, or right up, or used a show as sort of a precursor, or no? Not
to get off topic, but not a musical. I did use a movie though for
Oh.
that. But
Please.
it
What
was
was
the Clive Owen King Arthur movie.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's not a musical. Oh, okay.
No,
But-
like that's what I meant. It's like it wasn't a musical.
I just thought of one. Merrily We Roll Along.
There you go.
That
That's
would be a
another
good
one.
breakup because it's all about the
Yep.
breakup of a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then last we were going to talk about like pro shots, the musicals you can watch streaming. And that's where I said She Loves Me. The She Loves Me pro shot is so good. It's so romantic. You got Zachary Levi, Lara Benanti. It's perfect. And so then I also have Daddy Longlegs. The pro shot they have on Broadway HD is really fun. And Megan McGillis, and I forget the guy's name, but it's, in my opinion, maybe the most underrated show next to Bright Star. And it is just, the music and lyrics are so great by Paul Gordon, and it builds and builds and builds this relationship. It's only two people in the show, and they're at least every time I've ever seen it, it's always been cast really well. And this Broadway HD version it has, like I said, this married couple in real life, so they have like really good chemistry, and the songs are so, in my opinion, songs are so good. It's so romantic. That Broadway HD recording like saved me during the pandemic because it was
Awesome.
because I love that show so much, and I just think it's so special, and so that one I'd highly recommend checking that one out.
Yeah, I would say
Great date.
to your point, I Love You, You're Perfect Now Changes also on Broadway HD right now. And that's a great show. I directed that in college, loved it. And then the Little Women musical is on Broadway HD right now. That's really sweet. That's a really sweet show. I can't find anybody who doesn't like Little Women, like the stories. So yeah, and that's a great musical too. So yeah.
It's Adam Halpin is the co-lead.
Yes,
Adam
yes.
Halpin and Megan McGinnis, and they're married in real life. So it's really fun. There we go. Let us know what you think. What do you think on Broadway would make for a great date? What's your ideal, if you're listening, what's your ideal theater date? We want to hear, and what's a bad date that you've been on with theater, and what's a good date? We want to hear those stories.
Listeners, if you have bad date stories, send it to us onstageblog@gmail.com. If they're good, we'll publish it with your permission. That's that's been one of our topic lists that
would be fun
to have.
I would love to hear
we're happy
that.
to share onstageblog@gmail.com. Send us your best, funniest, or worst Broadway date night stories. Great.
So Chris, how do people follow you, follow the site, everything?
Yeah, well, first of all, visit www.onstageblog.com for all of our content. Is on our blog. It's fantastic. On the socials, we are at OnStage Blog at pretty much everything. So on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we are on TikTok as well. So I shouldn't say Twitter, I'm sorry, X as it's officially called now. We're at OnStage Blog there, and Instagram as well as TikTok. So yeah, just look up at OnStage Blog, you'll find us.
Great.
And don't forget the newsletter, because we're almost at 2,500 subscribers to the newsletter, which we're pretty excited about. We have new commentary every week, and that feed is a way to get all the latest published stories right to your inbox. So we have good stuff there, and feel you can sign up for our newsletter on our website, onstageblog.com.
And Greg, do you want to share your social media or anything? Or
yeah, sure. I tweet about movies at On Screen Blog on X, and write for On Screen Blog on OnStage Blog as well.
And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and also at rachelsreviewstheater.com and at Utah Theater Bloggers. You can find me there. And I will have my review coming up of the upcoming Tick, Tick, Boom at Kennedy Center. I'm super excited about that. So it's a lot of fun stuff in the future. So thanks so much.
We should say we're going to be talking about Tick, Tick, Boom the next podcast episode. So
it's going to be
absolutely,
it's going to be a good
really fun. So yeah, let us know all your thoughts, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.